Welcome back. Sportsnaut.com. Scott Gulbransen with you, a special guest today as we talk to former NFL executive Michael Lombardi, also the author of the brand new book, Football Done Right, setting the record straight on coaches, players, and the history of the NFL. You can also listen to him on one of my favorite shows, the GM Shuffle podcast, Lombardi Line on VSiN, and wherever you're talking about the NFL. Michael, you seem to be everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't know if you got a clone thing going on or what's going on, but thanks for being with us today.
Oh, it's good to be here, Scott. Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be everywhere. I'm enjoying it. I really am, and I'm appreciative of all the help I'm getting with the book and being able to talk about a sport that we both love.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I put out on social media and copied you on it. Reading your book, that first line where you talk about the Al Davis line, where he says, "Look, you don't work in the NFL, you live in the NFL," and so clearly you're doing that. Before we get into the book, because there's so much to talk about there, and I truly enjoyed it. Listen, the Chiefs and the Lions. The Lions upset the Chiefs at home. No Chris Jones, no Travis Kelce for the Chiefs. Of course, fans like to overreact. It's only 1 week. There's 17 weeks. But tell me your thoughts on the game on Thursday night.
I wrote a column for VSiN Online today, and I kind of thought it was a little bit of a strange game. I mean, the faith that Andy Reid showed in going for it on 4th and 25, to me, indicated that he knew that A, he might not get the ball back, and B, it was hopeless. He was frustrated with his offense. I thought neither team played great. I mean, the Lions, for all the conversation about this explosive offense, I think that they had 4 explosive plays. They weren't able to. They averaged 5.6 yards per play. They averaged 0.2 points per play, and they scored 14 points and won the game. So give them credit. But I thought it was a little bit of a sloppy game. Where the game changed, Scott, was in the fourth quarter. The Lions got 106 yards in the fourth quarter. They ran 20 plays, and they converted 3 of their 5 third downs in the fourth quarter. That's pretty good. And so that's where they won the game. And the Chiefs just looked very pedestrian-like. These receivers that everybody thought could take a step up didn't. And here's the alarming part, is this I'm not sold that this Lions secondary is elite. I think this Chief receiving corps was bad. And Tony could have played the worst game you've ever seen. He played volleyball out there with the ball. I mean, that pick 6 killed them. They had a chance to control the middle 8, and they couldn't do it. I think Andy Reid's really disappointed in his team. I think he's going to scratch his head. I think he knows that receiving room without Kelce, even if Kelce comes in, is going to be problematic.
Yeah, for sure. And then the Chris Jones situation, do you see that resolving anytime soon? I mean, I look, Andy Reid's such a good coach, and he's played it, I think, how you have to play it, which is like, I'm going to coach the guys we have, but clearly just not having everything settled in there makes it tough to get that team on the field and kind of defend that championship, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But look, they held that team to 14 points last night. I thought they played as good a defense as you could play. And the Lions receivers, they got advantage. They took advantage of some zone coverage, but they were putting pressure, to me, they were putting some pressure on Goff. I thought the Lions, weren't as sharp as they needed to be. All this conversation about Gibbs when he really didn't touch the ball very much in the game was somewhat disappointing. But look, it's week 1, and I don't want to overreact to it. I think everybody kind of takes a step back and look at it. But you're right. They're going to need Chris Jones. I just don't see the same urgency out of this Chief team. And Mahomes is going to be a lot like, I think, Brady in 2006 when, he didn't have a receiver that he felt like he could trust.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. All right, let's get on to the book now, Football Done Right. I read it last night, just a day after you released it. Phenomenal book. And the thing I like about this book, Michael, is I really believe, and maybe this is in your future sometime. I know you're too busy, but maybe you should be a college professor, because I think if there was a textbook on the history of football, this would be the perfect book for it, because you go through not only the history of football, but you trace back the lineage of coaches and players and systems we see today to those players. And in a time where everybody wants immediacy, everybody wants what's in front of them on their phone and all that, I think a lot of the history of the NFL and a lot of history of pro football gets left behind. Talk about the impetus for you to write this book and why you felt compelled to do so.
Well, I worked for 3 people in my career, really. At the end of the day, when I look at my 35-year NFL career, I worked for 3 people, basically 4, that really appreciated the history of the game, starting with Coach Walsh when I got on the team bus in San Francisco and I had to sit behind him and he was doodling Clark Shaughnessy plays from the wing formation, the single wing, and he was constantly looking at that. And I didn't have any idea who Clark Shaughnessy was. I had no idea. And then I went to work in Cleveland with Ernie Accorsi, who loved the history of the game, and then Belichick, who loved the history of the game. And then, of course, I worked for Al at the Raiders, who was the history of the game, right? And so it was ingrained in me. And one of the things Walsh would always do was say that the answers to problems lie in the past, not in the future. And I think he's right. You know, the Philadelphia offense that we watch today is a single wing offense. Now, it's got obviously concept of a pro passing game, but it's really a single wing offense. The quarterback is the main runner. You know, he ran 167 times last year. He didn't average a lot, but the threat of him as a runner really made that offense more effective. So I really love the history, and I think we don't give enough respect. Part of the problem, I think, with the NFL is we do not tie the past to the present. You know, for as great a coach as Paul Brown was, and as you know, I ranked him the number one coach of all time because he was the one who turned coaching into a profession. He made coaching a profession. I say in my book, he was the Bill Gates of coaching. He developed the operating system. And to not have the Coach of the Year award named after him is an injustice. To not have the Combine named after Al Davis is an injustice. To not have some of our past back. I mean, we don't recognize Kenny Washington, who, if you read my book, the only reason we have football in Los Angeles, the only reason we have SoFi Stadium and that Stan Kroenke's making billions of dollars is because of Kenny Washington. And why? Because during the 30s, and I know the NFL doesn't want to talk about this, but from 30 to 46, very few black players played in the NFL. There was a stoppage that wasn't discussed, but there was. And the only way that football could move to Los Angeles and play in the Coliseum that was built by African-American people was the city of Los Angeles demanded that the team have African-American players on it. And so they put Kenny Washington on the team. Now, he was past his prime. He had to go play semi-pro football, and he blew his knee out twice. This is a man who walked off that Coliseum field next to Jackie Robinson to a standing ovation, and everybody thought he was the best player on the field. And unfortunately, because of George Preston Marshall in Washington, he could never have an NFL career. So I think we should honor some of this. I think we should embrace it, and I think we should throw Preston Marshall out of the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and it's amazing because you look at baseball, right? Because I'm a big baseball guy too. And you look at baseball and the history of baseball to every little minutia about the game, the history of the game is documented. And I think that your book is a great way to start to do that with pro football and with the NFL because there's so much. You talk about Paul Brown. Of course, your book comes out a day before the Burrow contract, which was on Paul Brown's birthday, as you pointed out the other day.
How ironic, huh?
It was. And they do it at kickoff of the Thursday night game, of course, starting off the season. And I also like your approach, too, because one of the things I think most NFL fans get frustrated with is the Hall of Fame. And you go through the coaching section, you talk about people who the criteria is there is no criteria, right? It's just It's more about politicking. You compared it to politics. Talk about that and how do we get that right? How does the Hall of Fame change and start to make things right?
Look, I'll say this to start off, Scott. I'm not trying to get anybody out of the Hall of Fame other than George Preston Marshall. I'll make that very clear.
Right.
However, that being said, there are some guys who have gotten in that shouldn't be in. Dick Vermeil being one. And he would admit this. I think Dick Vermeil admits this. I think he even said so in his Hall of Fame speech. Like he got in. Carl Peterson is a dear friend of Dick Vermeil's, and he helped him. But Dick Vermeil doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame before some of these guys. Marty Schottenheimer, who's got 200 wins. He's the eighth winningest coach in NFL history with a 61 win percentage. People just think winning in the regular season is easy. No, it's not. I've lived it, right? It's hard. And he gets no respect. I mean, Dan Reeves went to 2 Super Bowls, drafted Hall of Fame players, has over 200 wins when you count his playoffs. He can't get a sniff. He played in the league, coached in the league, was an executive, took 2 different franchises to Super Bowls, and he can't get in. Why? And Vermeil got in over him? Vermeil's a 55% win percentage coach, and if he did not hire Mike Martz, he would have been fired as the Rams coach, right? he would have
Yeah.
been fired. And he didn't want to hire Mike Martin. He did not want to hire him. He did because John Shaw told him to. And he won a Super Bowl, and that got him in. I'm not taking it away from him. However, some of these guys belong. Mike Shanahan, Mike Holmgren, poor George Seifert. He can't get any
Yeah.
sniff at all. And, he's won 3 Super Bowls. He's got a great win because his last stint in Carolina was so bad. So I'm trying to educate people that when those writers get in the room, there's agendas all over the place. It's
Sure.
going to be interesting, Scott, to see how the Hall of Fame writers react to the book.
Yeah, it will be, and I think, but you lay out the case perfectly in there, and I think you talked about Don Coryell, who unfortunately, again, so many of these guys, we've seen it with players who live to an older age, and they never get to see themselves go in the Hall of Fame, and they end up doing it after they've passed, which is a crime, because the families get to enjoy it, yeah, but the person is not there. They don't get to enjoy the fruits of their labor, if you will. So we'll see how they react to it. I think you bring up all good cases, and for folks who read the book, you lay it out really well. Talk about too. One of the things you go into here, I think, is about the coaching piece of it, the criteria for coaching. Fans, those who cover the league on a shallow basis, they don't understand everything that goes into the coaching, and that some of the greatest coaches, and you talked about some of these guys who haven't gotten the Hall of Fame, they might not win a Super Bowl. That's not winning a Super Bowl doesn't make you the best coach of all time. It's the day in, the day out, the winning throughout your career and throughout the league. Talk about that, and how hard are we on coaches? Are we harder on coaches than we should be, despite the
Way
money
harder.
now?
Way harder. Really
Yeah.
hard. It's a hard game. The ball bounces in some strange places, right? And so it's a hard game, and it's challenging to handle. Uh, like let's take Buddy Parker. I wrote this book a year ago, essentially. I mean, it came out September 5th, but uh, it was finished in I would say June of last year.
Mm.
So when I was writing about Buddy Parker, he wasn't going to go in the Hall of Fame. If I went to New England's practice field today and I talk and they were going over their nickel defense, they would designate who's the star. Well, Buddy Parker invented the star. Buddy Parker invented the 2-minute offense. Buddy Parker invented the 2-minute defense. Buddy Parker really is essentially a part of the middle eight. I mean, he kind of started
Mm.
it too, but he couldn't get, nobody really recognized it. And I think people just take for granted that you can win NFL games or you're not innovative enough. Clark Shaughnessy, we would not have the forward pass if it wasn't for Clark
Right.
Shaughnessy. I mean, we would not. And if it wasn't for George Halas embracing the forward pass, we probably wouldn't have had that either. So I just think to me, what I'm trying to do with the book is make people more aware, to really kind of peel back the layer. And hopefully the league will embrace it because these coaches have given their lives to the league. It took Hank Stram a long time to get in the Hall of Fame because when he went to New Orleans in the second stint, it wasn't very effective. So maybe, everybody thinks, well, Seifert only won because of the 49ers. Well, it's hard to duplicate the 49ers organization somewhere else. It may
Yeah.
not have been a Seifert's fault. So I just think we are way too hard on coaches, especially ones that consistently win.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and you talk about Holmgren too, right? And going to Seattle, and how people look at him differently because of what happened in Seattle versus when he had the organization in Green Bay and that whole process. So very interesting, and then folks need to check it out and listen to it. The other thing is your top 100 players. I'm not giving anything away on that. I want people to read it. But the television piece, before I let you go, it's really interesting. And you wrote about television, and of course, you talk about Howard Cosell, you talk about Monday Night Football, all the great folks, John Madden. You go through a list of people who had an impact on the game. And it's awesome that we get to see NFL football so much more on television. But it seems to me that I got melancholy reading your stuff because being at my age, growing up when I grew up, I remember all those guys. I remember what a big deal it was to watch Monday Night Football highlights as Howard Cosell voiced them over. Have we lost that? Not criticism of people who broadcast the games today, but that whole event-centered type atmosphere around professional football and television. Is that ever going to come back, or is that gone forever?
I'm afraid it might be gone forever. We're so afraid to criticize. Howard Cosell, and I write about the line that he used, and I've tried to be this way in my commentary on the NFL: objective, fair, but honest. And Charles Barkley has made a career out of that. No one's more popular than Barkley. He's honest. I mean, I don't know why more people don't copy the model that he's created, because it's the model that Cosell created. ABC Switchboard on Monday Night Football would light up. 50% of people would complain about Cosell. 50% would say how much they love him. And he used to say all the time to Dan Meredith, Dandy, Dandy Don, if we see it, we got to say it. And he was right. Like, why can't we say it's not good? Why do we have to have? I mean, last night, for example, they're trying to highlight a tight end in the game, and the guy misses the block, and they were talking about how great the tight end is. Like seriously, like come on, the guy missed the block. I'm
Or
watching
Patrick Mahomes' perfect pass, according to the commentator that was returned for a touchdown. How is that a perfect pass? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's so like, can't we be more honest to the? I think we cheat the fans.
Yeah,
we cheat the fans. I tweeted out that Jawan Taylor was in the backfield in the second quarter. I don't know if somebody read it or if Twitter I'm not saying because of me, but finally they brought it up on the broadcast. Like, if I were doing the broadcast, I would have said it the first time I saw it.
yeah.
Like, what had to happen? Like, why can't we be honest and educate the fans about the game? And I think Cosell did. I think Musburger, what he did for the game is remarkable. Think about this, Scott. Both Musburger and Cosell have never won the Pete Rozelle Award for journalism. It's incredible. Like, who's voting for this? We would not have, the Washington football team sold for $6 billion. Cosell had something to do with the popularity of that. Musburger had something to do. Now, I'm not saying they should get a cut of the money, but the popularity of this sport, the driving force behind betting, Jimmy the Greek and Brent on the NFL Today, all played a part. It was the perfect storm.
It was huge, and they deserve the credit for it. And I'm glad that you pointed out there. And we'll see where it all goes. But it's sort of, you made the comparison between the Hall of Fame and kind of presidential politics. I look at the coverage of the league now a little bit like politics. It's all polarized. It's all polarized. Either it's all negative or it's all positive, and nobody criticizes. And that's where you're right. The viewer, the listener, just loses because they don't get the truth.
Nobody wants to be, and I'm not saying criticize unfairly. Okay, Asante Samuel, let me criticize him, and I'll do it fairly. He has a right to his opinion. He says Belichick wouldn't win without Brady, but he doesn't have any clue that the first Super Bowl the Patriots won, the Patriots rushed for 133 yards and threw for 134. They won because of their defense, and the last I checked, Brady didn't play defense. Right? They beat Pittsburgh in that game because Troy Brown returned a punt. It wasn't Brady that took it back. They beat us in the Tuck game because Vinatieri hit a 1-iron up the that I still cringe when I think about it. So, don't tell me, let's get the facts straight, right? Let's understand, as Al Davis taught me, why you win, why you lose. Right. Andy Reid's got to sit there today and understand, why did he lose? Well, he lost because he wasn't very good on the outside. He stopped running the football. He couldn't control the line of scrimmage. He really didn't have any. Mahomes had no reliable receivers. And, at the end of the day, he turned the ball over, and it cost him the game.
Yeah. Well, fantastic discussion, Michael. Of course, Football Done Right. You got to make sure you pick up the book wherever you get your books, Amazon, wherever you can find it. And Michael, I enjoy it very much. Oh, by the way, I got to get a plug in because you're wearing your hat, the Daily Coach.
Yeah.
If people out there don't sign up, you and Coach Raveling and the whole staff there, amazing work. And I don't care what you do for a living. I don't care if you're a stay-at-home mom or you're a CEO, you're going to get value there. And I thank you guys so much for doing that because I love it.
Thank you, Scott. We really appreciate all your help and support. It is truly the greatest labor of love of my life. Working with Kamadi Ramsey, working with Alex Servaso and Coach Raveling, the four of us, along now with Ryan Lassard. We're really excited about what lies ahead for the Daily Coach. And it's been the best thing that I've been able to be a part of in my life, including Super Bowls.
All right. Michael, thank you again for being with us here
on Sportsnaut. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate you.
Take care.